Hey, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good. How you doing, man?
Good, good. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you just fine.
Cool. This is my setup for residency interviews. It's like, oh, just hopefully this still works. But
Well, there you go. This is my setup that I used for martial arts classes during the pandemic when we had to
nice.
do things over the web. So it was pretty
We got a
wild.
bunch of cool tools there hanging up on the walls. I love a good grip wall.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see here.
I have all my stuff in a milk crate at some point when I have my own place. I definitely want to
And
hang everything up.
yeah, the buckets are full of stuff too.
Nice.
Pretty wild because we started DIYing everything because we didn't wanted to save money, and then I ran into some more funds by just getting some grants and research opportunities came up. So I started picking up some of the actual items. So I now
Nice.
have a ton of awkward, weird stuff like concrete horns and then actual horns.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if you
I
just
have
take like a
a couple
drinking
of
cup,
wooden pinch
man, fill it
blocks
full
that
of
I,
concrete, put an eyebolt in it, there's a horn.
yeah. I my first grip tools were made of pieces of wood I got from Home Depot or whatever with an eye bolt in them. So I definitely feel the DIY start eventually replace them by some brand name items or whatever too.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many items in grip, it's ridiculous. When you actually, if you don't want to compete, you can save like 90% of the, you can just chuck 90% of the items away.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
I try and answer a lot of questions on the subreddit grip training, and a lot of them are just like, oh, like what do I need for this or to get strong? And I'm like, really, you just need like a couple of basic things, and you'll get there. Like, yeah, if you want to train, like you were saying, for a comp, it's help the specific item so you know how it feels in your hand, know the technique or whatever. But if you just want to get your hand strong, there's tons of DIY ways out there.
Yeah, exactly. Go talk to John Brookfield. He'll tell you all you need is a towel and a bucket and like a carpet to roll up.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you seen his training videos?
I haven't. I think the only thing I've actually um, seen from him directly was a really old article on steel bending of when he was talking about the Hole brothers and how they
Yeah,
had just figured out like double overhand technique in like 2003 or something.
yeah.
And it
There's an
was just like
amazing
a
training video he has online that's like an hour long, and it's how to grip with basically things you would have laying around in your garage,
that's awesome. That's
and
really
it's just
cool.
fantastic. And you try some of the movements, and you go, "Oh wow, that's yeah, okay, I get it."
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was one somebody it resurfaced recently and I forgot about it, but it was like just holding a pinch block between your hands this way with a weight attached to it to like help with crushing either grippers or crushing nails, and just like take any pinch block or even just like a couple of bricks. I think it was Josh Goldthorpe who was like just take a couple of bricks and just
Yep.
like squeeze them together. But yeah, you can get wicked strong doing weird stuff if you try hard enough.
Yeah, exactly. I bought one of those like the giant HG 400 type grippers way back in the day. It's actually
Yeah.
a Bone Crusher 400. I love to use that for chest crush.
Oh yeah, super fun. I don't do grippers all that often anymore, but I do keep a couple out and around just for like if I steel bending and didn't get enough of a chest warm up out of it or something like that, I'll just chest crouch some heavy grippers too.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That definitely helped me with some of my crushing for sure. So,
Interesting using even grip tools for things they're not supposed to be used for.
I mean, really, what's a grip tool not supposed to be used for? If you're using it with your hands, you're probably still getting some grip work out of it.
Right, absolutely.
So, for those who don't know who you are, tell us about yourself.
So I am a former rock climber who eventually got into powerlifting in order to just get stronger at rock climbing. And from there, I kind of took a long twisting turn to eventually get to more strongman stuff because I wanted to be a little bit stronger in different areas than just the kind of up down of powerlifting. Not to shit on powerlifting, it's great and great fun. A lot of the training movements I do are still based around powerlifting movements, but as far as like competition goals, I quickly realized that my squat's not phenomenal, my bench is terrible, and my deadlift is okay, but I have to be really strong at all three if I want to be like do well at a powerlifting meet. And I realized that there were other aspects of getting strong that I liked. Like I would throw fat bar or fat grip adapters onto a bar to do like rows or whatever else silly was. And I kind of transitioned slowly from there into strongman and then eventually into like more grip and then eventually and steel bending stuff. So from my kind of rock climbing background, I eventually made it over towards focusing a lot on steel bending, but that's kind of how I got here.
And you've been steel bending since basically the beginning of the pandemic, right?
Yeah. I got to borrow some weights from a local gym for I think the first month or so of quarantine, and I was thinking like, okay, I bought an axle from Arm Assassin Strength Shop, like a 2 3/8 inch axle, because I was like, oh, this will help me train to lift the inch or something, and I was like, I'm gonna lift the inch by the end of, I don't even remember what year I picked, but I was gonna lift the inch if if quarantine didn't last all that long. And I was like, oh, I'm going to use this opportunity to get really strong at grippers. And I like managed to mess up a nerve in my hand going too hard with grippers for a little while. And I was like super frustrated about what to do with myself. And of all things, I hit up Tom Flesher, Tom Crusher on Instagram and Reddit and all that, and was like, hey, I think there was a post about how to, like, what you can do with the hardware store, where you can, like, what kind of things and nails you should bend, because I didn't know anything about anything and I had no idea what I was doing. And I talked to a couple of the people, and he actually was like, I don't think that is a post. You might have just made that up, but give me a couple hours, I'll be back. And he ended up posting a super valuable resource to Reddit about like a step-by-step guide about what to buy at the hardware store, what you were going to need, what things to look out for, things to avoid, that kind of stuff, how to get started generally. And like, I think that was probably like middle of the week, and by that Friday I think I went to 2 different hardware stores trying to find the right timber ties and 60 penny nails, and I had like cut up a pair of old jeans that my girlfriend was going to toss anyway, and just trying to figure out how to bend stuff. So it very quickly became I'm super bored studying for big exams in medical school, and I don't want to, something to get me out of the house during early quarantine, because we all thought that was going to be only a couple of weeks. And I was like, yeah, I'll bend some nails, give my hands a break from grippers, not realizing how much fun it was going to be and how much I was going to enjoy it more than I've ever enjoyed, closing grippers.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to do while you're in that position too, because you don't want to dedicate so much thought into programming like a powerlifting program or a strongman program while you're trying to do your exams. Going out there and just, smashing on some steel is going to get you a lot stronger without having to really think about much other than, is this the next step that I have to go?
Right. And it was something I didn't have to worry about, like needing a whole lot of equipment or like buying stuff on Craigslist or whatever, which the prices shot up for everything. And it was something I could just go into like the spare room where no one was doing anything and just like make a little bit of mess with chalk everywhere.
So what's the biggest thing you've bent now? You've been at it for about a year and a half now?
About a year and a half now. Yeah, I think I started end of April, early May, somewhere in there. Biggest by diameter and length, I bent 100 penny nail, which is pretty cool. I love bending those. I found that nails vary all over the place, whether they're like bright or you can find some really soft galvanized ones as well. But I found some relatively soft 100 penny nails that are tremendously long nails and look great when they're bent. And I figured with my super long rock climbing arms, I was able to get into a decent position. And I try and bend those, maybe not every workout, but around every other workout, just because it's a humongous, silly piece of steel that's way bigger than anyone would even probably consider a nail. If you talk to a lay person, you like talk about nails and they're like, oh yeah, to hang pictures or to like stick 2 2x4s together, and then you show them the 100 penny nail, which is 3/8 of an inch by 10 inches long, and they're like, that's, what are you going to do, hunt vampires with that? Like it's not what people think of when they think of a nail. As far as the hardest thing I've ever bent, I think by the theoretical numbers, the stainless steel hex stock, 5/16 by 7 inches. I think I want to say that it's around 600 or so pounds, give or take. Steel varies, so ratings are real ballparks. But I think that's technically the fastest, one of the fastest and one of the hardest things I've bent. And that was just a couple weeks ago, and I was really surprised by how easy it went down, because I've gotten stumped by some other bolts that should have been a little bit easier, but I haven't been able to get through. Like I still haven't. It's been a while since I've tried, but I haven't finished an edge and bolt, and those are only supposed to be like 580 or so pounds to kink. I've done a couple of 8.8 bolts as well that are like the metric equivalent to edge and bolts. I've gotten a couple of those down, but I still haven't gotten them down quite consistently enough to go for the Hiroto Jan Heller's 8.8 cert.
Yeah, I've heard that's a monster bolt, the 8.8.
Yeah, my buddy Cody sent me one because I realized I was getting close and didn't want to have to fight with shipping from internationally. So I did it kind of like across the internet search, like, hey, does anybody have one of these? I'll trade you for some other stuff. So he was kind enough awesome to send me a bolt that hopefully they'll get to attempt in a couple of weeks when my elbows are feeling right and my CNS is primed just the right way and I'm not too tired.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I still haven't really connected the CNS with my grip training yet. There's still some days where I'm way on fire and days when I'm totally off, and those days when I'm on fire are still like intermittent and I don't recognize it quite as well as I should.
Yeah.
I've only been doing like things other than grippers for about a year now, and making that connection is a neat thing when you start to really like pick up on when you're going to be having a fired up day with grip.
Yeah, I still don't know.
Yeah, I'm recognizing it a little bit more, but it's tough.
Yeah, like I think that was the last session I like really did any serious bending, and even my like warm up bend or whatever like felt a lot harder than it should have been, and I was like, oh, maybe this piece of steel is just tougher than usual, and then the next bar I did was also really slowing me down, and I was just like having one of those days where nothing went well. But like I said, the day with the stainless steel hex, which I think was just the week before, like it was one of those days where you just felt on fire, and I was like warming up and everything felt super smooth, and I was like, yeah, I'll do this hex. It wasn't necessarily like something I had planned to do or in my programming. I was just like having one of those on days.
Yep.
But it is super
first time I closed my 3. The only time I've actually closed my 3. I've only done it once. It was like a couple of weeks ago, and I was just having a really fired up day. It was almost a month ago now, and I was just having a really fired up day. And I haven't closed it again since. But that day it was just the atmosphere. I went to a strongman comp earlier in the day. Lots of good people around, and
yeah, some days I like that.
Yep.
I've had days where I like got a full night's sleep, like was properly caffeinated and just like couldn't move anything. And then I've had other days where it was like a long shift and I'd been up since like 5 a.m. or whatever. And I got home and just like needed to blow off some steam and stuff just melted, You kind of
We're going to ask Clay for some tips on that bolt when we go visit him on Friday.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he's a super cool guy.
Yeah, we're heading down to Texas. We're going to be stopping down in Austin and then going to Dallas Fort Worth for the Adam Glass contest and all that. So it's going to be
nice. Cool. That'll be super exciting just to kind of rub shoulders with some of the big guys and grip who've also just been like doing this for forever.
Yeah, we're going to learn a lot. That's the whole thing. I know I'm not going to do well at Kong. My numbers are nothing I'm going to shout home about, but that's okay. Those implements are pretty weird. Finish ball, horn, those are pretty strange. But, I'll learn a ton, and that's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've only technically done one in-person grip comp, and it was a really cool day just to like meet other people who were super jazzed about this thing that like normally when you go to like a commercial gym or even like a potentially a more specialized strongman gym, you like take things out of your gym bag and people are like, what the hell are you doing with that?
Yeah.
So just to have other
pretty
people
exciting stuff.
Other people involved who are just like excited about the same things you are is fun.
Or you hug a 45 and then like, there's a 700-pound deadlifter over there that comes and walks up and tries to do it and goes, what the heck?
Yeah.
It's always a fun thing to do.
Yeah. I was at a small like local gym, not like a chain gym, but just like a small whatever gym owned by this one guy who's like behind the desk every once in a while. And I would regularly be like lifting stuff and have people come over and it'd be like, do you want to try it? And they're like, yeah, it doesn't look that hard. And then we just look up at me like, what are you doing? And then I'd like add more weight and they're just like, no, what? I don't like they couldn't pick up anything. super fun. I always would try and like take a few minutes to like explain things and like load weight off, and that's something I think they would be able to do. But it's some fun stuff we do that other people just don't quite understand why we're doing it.
Exactly. You know, it's because I'm not as big as Brian Shaw. That's part of the reason why I do it. I grew up watching World's Strongest Man, and I said, "Oh, I'm never gonna be that big. What can I do that's still really cool?
Yeah.
Tear a deck of cards in half. That's cool."
Yeah, some of the World's Strongest Man competitors are just so freaking strong. Like Big Laws a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago or so now, he just like up and set the new world record for walking with the Dinny stones. Like tremendous feat of strength, and it was just like something he did on like a weekend when he was visiting.
Yeah, I almost feel like that's how Hafthor's career was in strongman. Now that he's on to like boxing and whatever else he wants to do, he's like, yeah, I was a giant, strong guy, and I did basketball.
Some people are just
and I became
super gifted like man. That.
Now I'm doing this. It's like, what?
Yeah.
How can you have that casual dedication and get that good?
Oh yeah.
Unbelievable.
And, the boxing fight I think was a little bit weird of an adventure for him, but like I'm sure he gave it his all, and his giving it all is like way different than a regular person who was just like, I'm gonna try this thing for a year or two.
Yeah, exactly. Hey man, as long as it keeps attention on him, I mean, he did a good job as of the Mountain in Game of Thrones. I wouldn't mind seeing him in another position as a big monster. Yeah. That's cool. Why not? So the fans asked, since you had a pretty quick rise in your bending, did you suffer any injuries during your bending progress, and how was that, and how did you deal with them?
I wouldn't say I necessarily had any like injuries. Part of what I got into steel bending was because I was trying to kind of haphazardly rehab an injury. I have kind of not weak elbows, but I have some lagging tendon injuries that like my elbows will crack certain times throughout the day from rock climbing. I've been doing, grip related activities since like 2014, I think was when I started rock climbing. So okay. I do have a bit of like over time, not just injuries to tendons, but like I've built up tendon strength over time.
Yeah, you have a good foundation.
So I think that helped a lot as far as like staving off bad injuries. I haven't like hurt a tendon or anything like that where I had to like really take some time off.
I did the grippers for so long, and then before I did steel bending, so I didn't feel it. I didn't feel much in my hands or anything like that.
Yeah, it took a little bit while to get used to like thickening up parts of my hands in weird places. With quarantine, I didn't have that barbell with the nice knurling to like rough up my palms in funny ways.
Yeah,
and I was like just starting to get like the gripper callus on the like side of my palm, but I think that more than anything else, I've lost skin and a bit of blood from just tearing the shit out of my hands with Cordura wraps, or even with leather wraps. I'll get like little cuts and tears in the side of my palm when I'm pressing too hard.
Yeah, but, I've used those Cordova wraps.
Knock on wood, no serious injuries from bending.
Well, that's good, man. That's really good.
Other than like punching myself in the face when the wrap slip.
Oh yeah, I've done that. That's always fun. Yeah, I got sore, in this area. I had to deal with that for a while, just from, pressing in that motion, not being used to it.
Yeah,
I was doing it wrong.
The shoulder mobility is super weird for steel bending.
How long did it take you to find the groove? Were you able to find it pretty quickly, or to actually find the proper power groove for double overhand?
It's hard to say whether or not when I like found the groove. A couple of weeks ago, I was actually looking up some of my like first couple of bending videos that I posted to Instagram, and I was doing the classic thing where you're like start to bend it up by your chin, and then you like very quickly it's like goes down to like middle of your chest. But I think the first day I was bending, I like really haphazardly wrapped up a nail, and like I said, like scraps of denim that used to be a pair of jeans, and I was like, this is stupid, this doesn't work at all, I don't understand what's going on. And then I like spent an afternoon watching videos, realizing that like getting the really tight wraps was important. I used another layer of denim to make it so it didn't hurt my hand as much, and from then I was able to bend a timber tie and a 60D nail pretty easily on my first day. I think it was a couple of weeks before, my bending bag from Fat Bastard Barbell Co. got there when I had like a pair of actual leather wraps. But I was able to kink a bastard bar that first day I got it. I realized after 20 minutes or whatever of struggling to kind of crush it that I ended up managing to like lock my like elbow on one side against my leg and then use that leverage to crush it down, because I realized that I was trying to crush it and all of a sudden it got really easy and I was like, oh no, that means I did something wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that by just keeping at it, practicing, just I didn't buy a 50-pound box of nails right off the bat, but I bought, a couple handfuls of it, however many nails I could fit in one hand while I was walking around the hardware store, and just would bend those, twice a week, just 5 or 6 nails, trying to build up the volume slowly over time. And I think that helped me kind of like adjust to what I could do as far as getting the position right and just practicing. And then like I got a couple of small tips along the way as far as like marking the bar at a certain distance from the end so you could tell, and in the middle so you could tell if you were like way off center and things like that. Realizing how to like I'm right-handed, so my left hand is not quite as strong sometimes with bends, so just like knowing that I have to like focus with both arms or like focus more on the left sometimes if it isn't moving. That kind of helped over time as far as getting the position. But I don't have tremendously flexible shoulders, but I guess I have enough that I can just get my arms up for the double overhand bends. I know sometimes with longer bends, people have trouble. Hey.
How you doing?
But it's never super duper been a problem for me.
Man, I think what really made me get the connection was the first time that I saw a video where somebody wasn't facing directly at the camera bending. Because I was bending down. My elbows were going down every time I bent, because that's what it looks like when you're facing directly at the camera.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't until I saw somebody at a 45 do a bend and I realized their elbows were going out. And then Josh Goldthorpe actually confirmed it. He told me, yeah, dude, you need to be bending with your elbows out. Like, you need to be smashing that bar forward. And just after that paragraph, I went out to the garage and wrapped up some 5/16 steel, and it melted like easier than quarter inch.
Oh, yeah.
It bothered me once I had it right. Like, it annoyed me to where I was like, I don't even want to bend anymore. This is silly. But then I tried the red nail and realized, well, that's a lot harder than the hardware store 5/16 stuff. So I still have another challenge to go for.
Yeah, the current red nails are much closer to drill rod than the 1018's cold rolled steel that you can get elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a big shock. It was like stepping up from round to square stock in the quarter inch. So that's what it felt like between the hardware store, like the Everbuilt 5/16, and then the actual red nail.
Yeah, I was all set up thinking I was like ready to certify on the red nail back last end of October, so it's almost been a year now. But I was going off a batch of red nails that I'd gotten the prior summer, which apparently were just before they added their special whatever it is to the bars to make them extra angry. And I in the same bending session, I went from, oh yeah, so this is the last red nail of my LPAT. Cool, that's a milestone. I bent 25 red nails or whatever. And I, melted it in iron mine pads with no rubber bands or anything. And I was like, this is great. It took me like less than 30 seconds. I'm ready to start. And I was gonna do 3 in a row as like a practice round, because Gil Goodman Squeezes had like just certified on the red nail, and he like did all 3 in the same take or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that too. And so I did the one red nail. It was super easy. And I grabbed the second red nail, which happened to be from the next batch, and was like, I like hit it really hard and just I tore open the skin on my index finger on the Cordura wraps. And I was just like, what happened? I was so taken aback. It took me another like 6 months to actually build up the like pain tolerance in my hand and like get some better calluses after like tearing calluses a couple of times on the weights before I could actually do it with the new angry red nails.
One time have I ever used those style of wraps. I for some reason thought, okay, they got these cool new red wraps from Ben Sport Canada. I don't even know if they still sell those ones anymore. The original red wraps that
I think he's kind of temporarily discontinued them. I think Josh is still working on a better replacement of them. He mentioned one time that he was like trying to get like actual Kevlar wraps, but I don't know where he's going with that right now. I'm sure he'll work out something. It's just that like Hoover is super expensive up there.
That I would take the red wraps and wrap a red nail and then snap it. And I proceeded to work on that for 30 minutes. And yeah, it was horrible. It was just a horrible experience.
Cordura wraps, you know, some people swear that by them. I know like Adam Glass has said that like you shouldn't necessarily move up to the next like level of bar until you can really conquer something in not just double leathers, not just suede, but like iron mine pads as well. But man, they are hard on your hands if you're not used to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I wound up going back down from the 5/16 to play around with 1/4 inch square and different styles. Actually, is what I wound up doing to get the Heslip style down and the vertical bend down and things like that.
Nice
Reverse bends and the other ones.
I tried to bend I bent a piece of 1/4 inch square the other day. I realized I didn't have any pictures for my website of the square stock, and I would like wrap it all up, and I was like, I'll see if I can bend this reverse, and it absolutely did not move. I just like give like one hit and was like, nope, not today, and then just like bent it the regular way for me.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Those other positions can be really tough.
Yeah.
And I tried to invent some too. I tried to be all Josh Goldthrope and invent some new styles of bending. And yeah, bad idea. I tried a Superman bend, like laying on my stomach, bending, but basically with my arms out so they'd be in front of me. So it was like bending up here.
Heslip but above your head.
Yeah.
You know, Cody was doing those like weekly Beyond the Bend challenges for a little while, and like he was doing like the like X bend or whatever.
Yeah, I got the X bend. I tried that.
Kind of like reverse, but like I don't know how he was doing it. And then like behind the head and like the Heslip stuff as well. Like I would love to eventually do the kind of like bastard in every way cert where you're like you're like not just strong in one way but also like in other aspects too. But it's gonna be a while before my double underhand and reverse get that far.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Those ones are tough. Double under is, I mean, it's the only way I can bend anything like barehanded at all, but it's just the whole technique is tough. I'm trying to get to a yellow nail barehanded and double under.
Yeah.
That's where I want to get to.
It's all those things that like I keep saying like, oh, I'll do those eventually, you know. After I was telling myself like, oh, after I cert the red nail, I'll take some time and pursue X, Y, Z. But instead, all I did was like mess around for a couple of months. Now I'm like chasing the 8.8 as well. Like the next cert, like, oh, after the next cert, I'll take a break and, you know, explore a little bit more, do something else fun. But like I did take a little bit to like, I like gave up Cordura pads for a while. I just like didn't touch them for a couple of months because I was so tired of my hands hurting like that after bending. But I got into like, I did more of the like really long nails. I've been working more at like 8 or 9 inches length rather than 7 inches or shorter. So different. I have explored a little bit after the red nail cert, but I'm gearing up towards, you know, bigger bends at 7 inches again.
Do you have any plans on attempting the gold nail eventually with those long bars?
You know, I did buy a whole bunch of 11 32nd by 8 3/8. They're about 8.5 inches stock off of Ackerman, Delmar Carter. I guess he at one point was chasing the gold nail, and I just wanted some more 11 32nd stock to play with more than anything else. But the fact that they were gold nail length and I was already kind of chasing some, you know, 9 or even 10 inch bends, I'm going through them, and those are one of the things I try and bend every bending session. But I don't know that I'm specifically ever gonna cert the gold nail. I definitely want to at least bend one. I got the tiniest little baby kink out of one a couple of weeks ago. It was like too small of a kink for me to even use little plastic, you know, I don't know the name for it, but like a plastic protractor, like caliper type thing.
Yeah.
And so I got out the like printed protractor and was like, cool, I moved this about 1.5 degrees. Maybe if I adjust it wrong, maybe I got 2 whole degrees out of it. But
that's where you
really,
roll it
like,
on a table and take a picture to show that.
Yeah, I did. I was like, if I hold it just right, you can tell it's not straight. But otherwise, if you just like hold it in your hand, I didn't think I had moved it at all. But I was like, on my like second rewrap, I like put it down on the table and I was like, sure enough, it like did move a little bit. And I was like, yeah. And so I gave myself another like 15 minutes of fighting with it. But I was probably wailing on that thing for an hour in double leather wraps, and a couple of degrees at most. So it's again, I don't know what kind of angry stuff they put into their cold rolled steel over at Iron Mind, but those bars are mean as hell. I bought, I think, 6 or 8 of them off Cannon Power Works a little while ago when they started carrying them. But there's other search like on David Horn for like snapping one of those. That might be easier for me to do, and I'm terrible at snapping, but that might be more achievable than bending one double overhand. They are mean suckers.
I think they put nano carbon tubes in them.
Something miserable, man.
Have you any plans on scrolling?
I haven't done much scrolling. I think the closest I've gotten to scrolling has been, Harding horseshoes, which I'm not sure really counts. I found a piece of scrap metal out like literally near like the dumpster or whatever that's like, I don't know, 1.5 feet long by 1/4 inch by I don't know, like 1.5 inches, 2 inches or something. And I was able to like flex that pretty good just when I found it. And I was like, I'll do this braced later. But I think that, bending a gold nail at some point, bending a Goliath bar at some point are things that I'd love to be able to say I did, but it's not really something I'm necessarily pursuing right now.
Okay, so where do you see the sport of bending in the next few years, like 5, 10 years? Where would you like to see it?
I'd like to see it at the very least considered with grippers and other aspects of grip sport. I don't think it'll ever be on like ESPN the way it was in the 80s with World's Strongest Man.
That was awesome.
Which is really cool to watch videos of people doing just things with really weird technique or on their head or whatever. I think for that comp or something, they like weren't allowed to use their legs, but I watched a couple of those videos just being like, oh come on, you could do that totally different if you, but 30 years ago they didn't know. I think that I'd love to see it be just a tad more mainstream. I still, whenever I post to Reddit or I stop posting to Facebook about it, I get comments like, you ruined a perfectly good whatever it is. Whether it's like bending pans or bending wrenches, it's like, well, now you can't use that for its intended purpose. And it's like, well, I didn't buy it for its intended purpose. I bought it to destroy it in a weird way. But I loved it to be just like, grip is already kind of a fringe. The way I talk to other people who aren't in the sport is that like, well, there's strongmen, like the mountain or whatever, who pulled like 500 gajillion tons. Like there's competitions with the big rocks and the stones and they pick them up over the bar or whatever. And they're like, yeah, I've seen that on TV or something in the 80s. And I'm like, well, there's also this thing where it's like you grip things and you hold on to whatever it is in a really awkward way, or like if I'm in the gym, I can talk about like hubbing a plate or like plate pinching 2 45s together, none of which I can do. But like the idea of like, oh, you pick something up in a weird way just to kind of make it harder to work your hands a bit more. But even once you get to the like fringe sport of grip, 2 years ago before I'd ever bent my first nail, people would come up on my like suggested page to like follow on Instagram, and I would be like, oh, those crazy people who bend steel, like, I think the only reason I followed Tom Fletcher in the first part was because he had done other grip stuff. The fact that I was kind of tolerating all this weird steel bending stuff that also showed up on my page every once in a while, because I was really there for like the rest of the other content that he did. But my interests right now are kind of becoming less and less mainstream. And I don't have necessarily high hopes for steel bending to ever become as mainstream, but at the very least, just to have people like who like people know about the captains of crush grippers. People, if you hand someone a torsion spring gripper, they'll at least know what to do with that.
Yeah.
But if you hand someone a red nail with, you know, pads on it, people are going to be, even if you're like, oh no, Iron Mind sells these, it's the same company, they'll be like, well, what do you want me to do with this?
Exactly.
You know?
Well, they have cornhole.
Knowing about the sport of steel bending, even if they don't do it themselves, would be like a huge plus.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have national championship cornhole on ESPN, so
yeah,
I mean,
they have some funny stuff.
Steel bending, like we could get something where everybody's competing to, you know, scroll a dog, and you get time plus style points.
It only takes one big break, you know.
Is the competition, you know?
Speaking of weird things on ESPN, I saw one time, I don't know how I got to it on like YouTube or whatever, but I saw one of those, and I swear I'm not making this up, but it's competitive like wood chopping and like log cutting.
Oh, yeah. I watch that all the time. I love it.
Yeah, and
We're from
saw
Washington.
one of the
Lumberjack Championships is a big deal up here.
Yeah, we know all about that.
I saw one of those, like an ad. Must have been like an ad on YouTube, because I was like, what is going on? And then like a year or two later, another of my friends like posted to their Instagram story like, hey, I found this weird shit. I've been watching it for like 12 hours because I can't figure out what's going on. And I was like, holy shit, I didn't hallucinate it. That's a real thing.
Dude, they have two people stand on a log and try to roll it, and the other person falls off in water and wins or loses.
Yeah,
and that same thing.
It's super cool. I mean, ESPN, you know, we got to find somebody who knows somebody, because I don't know if it's as much of a performance and spectator sport. I know some of the guys who do like performing strongman stuff, they say that like, you know, like bending a 6-inch wrench, even if it's like relatively easy to do, even braced or whatever, or like a 60 penny nail that a lot of really strong benders could do in their sleep practically. But the person who doesn't grip and doesn't bend stuff isn't going to know the difference between like a grade 2 bolt and a grade 5 bolt that could take like twice as much pressure to bend.
But they know what a wrench feels like.
Right.
So they know what a wrench feels like. Yeah.
You go through, you know, kitchen appliances or something. We got to bend a spoon, then a fork, then a frying pan. You got to roll up.
Yeah. People are like, oh, I know a frying pan. Like I've used one of those before, like to see someone roll it up. I know that like different strongmen have done that on like the Today Show, where they'll like come in and they'll like bend a pan, and the host will be like, oh my God.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, you know what? You could still use it. You could put a tortilla in there or something.
Yeah. Well, I think it's Alton Brown's TV show Cutthroat Kitchen, where they like make people cook with like weird handicaps or whatever, things like you can only cook wearing these like giant lobster mittens or whatever. I think one time
that'd be perfect.
Someone a really mangled pan, and we're like, go cook on this, and the guy was like, no. So,
that'd be perfect. We get some benders, get on there and show them how the pans got bent in the first place. It'd be fantastic.
Yeah, at least one person has tried to cook an egg or whatever on a pan that's been rolled up before.
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
I'm telling you, stick a tortilla in there, throw some cheese in there. You got a quesadilla for sure.
It's a burrito all wrapped up already.
That's right.
Just have to like heat it evenly with a blowtorch or whatever.
Yeah, whatever works. So what is your psychological experience going through a bend? Can you explain that through me? What goes through your mind and before a bend, and maybe after you get a big bend, how you deal with the adrenaline dump and just the whole process?
It sounds a little funny, but I try not to get like too amped up before a bend. I think it's a quote from like X-Men First Class or whatever, when like Professor X is talking to Magneto and is like the like he said something about like the balance point for strength is between serenity and rage or something. I forget the exact quote because I haven't seen those X-Men movies in a while. The timelines are all messed up anyway for that kind of stuff. But I really just try and like calm myself down a little bit. I think that Bud Jeffries talked about it in his podcast episode with Cody a while back, as far as like you have to be really, really focused when you're doing certain kinds of lifts, because otherwise it'll squish you. If you have, I've personally only ever done like, I think the heaviest weight I've ever had on my back was like 500, maybe 600 pounds for like a yoke walk. And like, if you're not totally present and like in that moment, like you're either not going anywhere or it's gonna staple you to the ground. And whether I'm like squatting or bench pressing or deadlifting or bending some steel, I really try and be just like super duper present in the moment. And I think part of that went back to like rock climbing as well, kind of as I started, where if you're not really paying attention to how you're holding on to that little chunk of whatever on the wall and exactly where your foot placements are, you're going to just fall off the wall. You're not going to be able to hold on and stay on that wall if you don't have the, whatever you want to call it, the mind body connection, the proprioception. If you're not like focused on what you're doing, it's not going to go anywhere. And I know some people, I've tried like ammonia smelling salts once or twice with bending, and to get like really amped up to like, I'm going to smash this thing. But I don't necessarily do any better that way. I try and just, there's some aspect of like visualization, but like as far as like the specifically visualizing whatever diameter bar, I just think about like the way I have to get the bar up high, the way I have to get tight in certain ways. I think somebody that might have been JT Strassner talked about the idea of like using like your back as kind of an elastic band when you get the like bar above your head and just like pull it down real quick. But I just focus on getting real tight all the way down to my toes. I'll do the kind of more of a split stance where I'll kind of like lean forward, lean back, and just kind of work until I can get really tight all the way down to my feet. Even if I'm bending with my hands, I want to be like firmly planted, core tight, shoulders back, like all the way ready and engaged to blast into whatever bar, bolt, or nail I've got in my hands at that time.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I even make sure I pick specific shoes because, grounding is that important to me in my bend. I've seen guys bend some monster steel. Don is one of them in like running type shoes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how is he getting that much power through the ground? That, when he's just casually standing the way he is. Mm-hmm. It's incredible. So yeah, I definitely use that split stance and try to really ground myself into it as well.
Because he's an alien, he doesn't count.
Yeah, that's probably part of it.
Yeah, I sometimes listen. I sometimes bend without music, but I hear that he often will bend just like in silence. The videos of him just like softly grunting as he throws whatever into a tremendous bar.
Yeah, that's incredible. Pretty incredible. Without a crowd, just complete silence by yourself. Like, it's interesting that some records have been broken that way in home gyms during this pandemic, and you wonder how those people would have done in front of a crowd, and if in front of a crowd affects them in a bad way. It's kind of interesting.
The whole Yerkes-Dodson arousal curve is really fascinating stuff. Like, some people would do better by themselves, some people would do worse by themselves, and whatever you're used to doing, it's the same thing as far as like ammonia smelling salts for a big meet. If you're not used to your CNS being activated in that way, whatever it is, it's going to kind of throw you. You don't want your first time, being cheered on, having someone yell like up to be when you're like in the middle of a competition, like at your maximum effort. You want to at least like try and experience something like that, whether it's like loud music or like crowds cheering or the ammonia smelling salts at some point beforehand, to kind of at least like so that your body knows what's going on. But whatever you do to get into that like headspace to move big weight or bend big bars or crush grippers or whatever it is, like whatever works for you as an individual, I think it's like just keep working on that. If somebody has found like their magic bullet as far as their environmental conditions to like be super strong, like good for them. Like that might not work for someone else, but if they figured it out, like that's great.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
So what motivates you to compete and or just bend in general and continue to go for new certs?
Honestly, it's less about the recognition, and I know I'm not the strongest person out there. My first strongman competition, I was like very solidly in the middle of the pack. I was like 7th out of 12 or 14 or something, and I think my first unofficial, like not sanctioned powerlifting meet was just like a push-pull meet, and I placed like last in bench in the middle of the deadlift. But really, it's just the like as far as competing. And I don't have a whole lot of experience like in-person competing because I got into this sport when I was out in Maine, and there's not a whole lot of grip people out in Maine. So a lot of things I did was virtual. And then with the bending, it was during lockdown. So even though I was only like an hour or so away from Tom, it was 6 months before I was living on Long Island before I actually like met up with him to bend anything in person. So it's really more just about the like learning experience for me when a competition. Like I said, there's always someone who's going to be more experienced than you, who's stronger than you, lift better weights, and there's always something you can learn from, just like I said, rubbing shoulders with the big guys. As far as chasing certs, I kind of just want to see what I'm capable of. I've taken to bending really, really well, better than I ever expected to. And I think just kind of seeing how I stack up with some of those other people who are out there is really a cool opportunity to have, because you in a larger sport like powerlifting where there's like hundreds and hundreds of guys who are all like super duper strong, like yeah, you might get to face off with them in a meet every once in a while if the like regional aspects line up, but because the steel bending community is so small, I mean there's probably way less than 1,000 people total who have ever bent a nail in the world. It's cool to like have someone that you competed against and have them not just be like a number Joe Schmo who's lifted X number of pounds, but if you're like going for an 8.8 cert on Hiroto's website, you can be like, okay, these number of people, I can count them on like, well, I think there's 13 of them. So I was going to say not quite two hands, but you can see like which people have done it at like certain lengths, and you can tell like who's out there. And these are people that like, I know Josh Goldthorpe, I know people who have done these like crazy bolts. So it's cool being in a small community like that, because it's not just a competition against whoever shows up that day. It's very much a competition against like your friends and your peers. David Horn does his steel shredders. I think the next one is gonna be like 10 or something, but there's like a core group of people who like do this, and they have these competitions, the recent like shortest bar competition. It's a bunch of people who like know each other and have competed against each other before, and are like, oh, this guy got it this length, like, oh, and people like trash talking their bends and everything.
Yeah. I got into that with John Flaherty.
People it's not like we're very much in a like strangers on the internet kind of sport, but at the same time, because we're all on different social media things, like we know each other. It's people I've never met before. They're my internet friends or whatever, but it's people that I like interact with on a regular basis. I'm like commenting on their things on Instagram or Facebook regularly and being like, yeah, man, good job. Like it's a small, tight-knit community in some ways, despite it being a very spread out community across the globe sometimes.
I 100% agree with the learning aspect of competing too in competition. I mean, I know we're going to King Kong this weekend, and there's no way in heck I'm getting above last place. So, I mean, we're going to Texas to compete against the big boys, so
yeah,
it's just going to be rubbing shoulders, learning, and getting to meet the guys that we've talked to and interacted over the internet.
Absolutely. Getting to walk up to people and be like, holy shit, your forearms are that big in real life.
Yeah, exactly. Damn, your forearm is as big as my head.
Yeah.
That was
I forget who described him, but as like a 200-pound guy who has the arms of a 400-pound guy just welded onto him.
Oh, Jeff Dave?
He's just super duper strong.
Yep. That's the arm wrestler, Jeff Dave.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I don't know that he even would be able to bend steel with those massive mitts. But
I thought you were talking about Matthias Schleight for a minute. He's only got one giant forearm welded onto him.
I haven't really gotten into arm wrestling a whole lot, so I know the name Jeff Dobb, or whatever. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm butchering it, but I know of him. But like, I'm on a couple of Discord servers for grip, and one of them is more arm wrestling that just like has a little bit where they talk about grip, and I'll kind of forward every once in a while into the broader channels, and people will be like name dropping things or talking about techniques, and I'm like, okay, I have no idea what we're talking about. I'm
Well,
gonna go
yeah, I
back to
mean-
my little grip corner.
You mentioned the X-Men earlier, and arm wrestling, I believe, is the sport where you're going to find the most of those guys, because you have Jeff Dabe, who is, you know, a mutant essentially. You have
Yeah, Matty
Matty
Schleich.
Schleight, who's a lightweight, but he has one arm that's like
Yeah,
the arm
the
of
one-
a
the one
220
giant arm
pound
guy.
man, dude. Yeah, his one arm is like a 220 pound person. It's like a 19-inch forearm, and his other arm's
Yeah.
like 13 or 12 inches or something. And then you have a Russian arm
Hulk or
wrestler
whatever.
who
Yeah.
allegedly grew up near Chernobyl and has a sixth finger. And he had it removed, but he still has all the muscle and like forearm muscle associated with his sixth finger.
Yeah.
So there's that to deal with. I mean, it's just wild stuff.
I mean, even like Hafthor Bjornsson, like that's not a regular dude you're
No.
competing against.
No, I've watched
think
the
it-
Eddie Hall documentary where he's just like, oh yeah, and there's the freak going against me.
Yeah, I think it was Rob Kearney, who is like one of the shortest, like super competitive professional strongman, and he's like, I don't know, 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", which is not short, but then there's like, he was saying like whenever he is in a heat where he's up against Thor, he's like, wow, that is a big guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's an incredibly large person.
Just
him
the
and
difference
Brian
in
Shaw.
scale.
Yeah,
Sure.
all those guys, Stoltman.
Then you have the
that big.
Stoltman, and you're just like, I'm a midget.
Yeah.
Look at these
Oh
guys.
yeah, the Stoltman brothers. They just happen to be tremendous dudes from Scotland. The smaller of the two, who's like 6'3" and like almost 300 pounds, who has like a super manual job where he's like needs to be strong as hell. Like
Yeah, the smaller
Absolutely.
one's Europe's world champion this year.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the other one was world's strongest man last year. You know,
And he's good, 6'8",
Incredible.
400 pounds.
It's
incredible guys.
So, has any bar ever made you like nervous going up to it? Have you ever failed on a bar and then had to deal with another bar, or maybe there was just a bad day with too much stimuli? But have ever a bar ever like really freaked you out and you either didn't attempt it or just knew it was, you know?
I
just a
mean,
bad
the gold nail was kind of like that.
situation.
I've had
Yeah.
those sitting in my box of steel for a couple of months now, and I just attempted one, you know, a couple of weeks ago for the first time. But I think the only bolt that I've been really like in my head about was the Edgin bolt. I've only really honestly attempted it once, and I got it, like I did kink it, but I like got stuck in the sweep somewhere, and I've come back to that same bar once before and got like a couple of degrees out of it.
Now is that 5/16 square?
No, the Edgin bolt. So it's the 5/16 by 7-inch grade 5 bolt. I think traditionally it's the one with the triangle on the head. I managed to get a hold of some 8-inch ones from McMaster who were just a little bit longer.
I was thinking of the Corcoran bolt, the Aaron Corcoran 5/16 stainless.
Oh yeah,
the heat belt. Yeah, that one.
No,
one's
I'm a long
terrifying,
way
according
from
to
the
a lot of people.
5/16 square. But that's a bolt that I was able to take it down at 8 inches. And it took me an hour to get through that bolt, but the 7-inch one, I have a couple of them and I just haven't attempted them. I've done stuff that's technically stronger as far as the poundage, and the 8.8 bolts are the metric equivalent to that bolt, and I've taken down a handful of those, both the JH head markings and the OF head markings in the zinc rather than the black matte coating that Jan Heller has for his bolts. So I've theoretically taken down stuff that's harder as far as the poundage, but I think because I attempted that bar and was able to kink it a little bit before I was probably like super duper ready for it, it's just been one of those bolts where I've just been like, it sits there in my pile of bent steel, and I have a couple more of them mixed in with my other steel, and I'm like, oh, I'll get around to those eventually. But I think now that I'm like ramping up to the 8.8 cert, it's probably time to give another one a real attempt, because if I can take one down and within the 5-minute time limit for Jan cert, it's going to be an omen one way or another about how the real thing's going to go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a big goal.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think that's the only bolt that I really have kind of been like, I don't want to do that, apart from like aluminum, which like you worry about snapping. I've been like the thing where you like roll it up an extra piece of leather around your neck and you're like bending it away from your body, hoping it's not going to snap. But I haven't had any like catastrophic failures like that bending yet. I'm knock on wood.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not at the point where I'm going up against the 5/16 grade 8s, because I hear those do occasionally snap at the threads. But the as far as snapping, all of my snapping has been on purpose so far, at least.
So that's good.
So on that same line, what would you say is your greatest blunder and or injury?
Probably not necessarily with steel bending, but probably just back to rock climbing initially, when I messed up my elbows. Steel bending is super fun and you want to do it as much as you can. And, rock climbing for me was much the same way. I wanted to be doing rock climbing every single day because it's fun and I'm good at it because I was tall and had the reach for it. But I was rock climbing probably 4 or 5 times a week when I first started out, and very quickly got super bad tennis elbow in my elbows that would then come back, once or twice a year. So I think my biggest blunder was probably just like pushing it too hard before my tendons are ready. And that's also something that I try and tell people as well, whether it's stuff with bending or grippers or anything, is just to kind of take it slow. No matter what age you are, you've got more ahead of this than you think you probably do. And it's going to serve you better to be in this for longer and progress slower than it is to kind of burn out quickly by going for something that's over your head. It's a lesson I had to learn the hard way, but I basically try not to ever work out more than about 3 times a week, because I know that some part of my body is not going to like it one way or another, whether it's just repetitive stress on my knees or my elbows or hands or whatever it is. Like you got to recover a little bit.
Absolutely. Especially as you get older, you really know how much more important recovery is.
Yeah, I think I'm the youngest in the like class of 2020 benders by a couple of years, but I'm almost 30.
Oh, so just wait, then your recovery has to come much longer. You'll feel it soon.
So do you feel like studying medicine has helped you, like anatomy, kinesiology with bending, or just in general with understanding the positions and the right way to actually go at the bars?
I don't know if it's necessarily helped with steel bending specifically, but I think just having a more fundamental understanding of anatomy and how the joints in your body work, and knowing which muscles are going to move your arms and legs in different ways. So if you just like think about like, oh, I saw someone in the gym literally earlier today who was giving cues to one of the coaches who was giving cues to somebody else, who was talking about how like, oh, when you squat, rather than turning your feet out, turn your knees out. And I was like, yeah, you do. Cause like you think about like the external rotators in your legs, and how moving your feet like may or may not actually engage the muscles in your hip into your butt that actually are required. And like having a specialized knowledge of the muscles and the nerves in the forearm is cool, because I can be like, oh, that's the muscle that hurts. Wow, that sure is tight. And I'm going to be an osteopathic physician rather than a DO rather than an MD, so I can be like, ooh, I'll counter strain my flexor compartment so that I can, it's a lot more of just like peripheral stuff rather than like, oh, my superior knowledge of anatomy has it so that I know I'm going to be, it's none of that. It just makes things just the tiniest bit easier as far as like I'll know that I have to engage my back muscle, like think harder about my back muscles in a certain way, because I know they're going to be useful when I'm doing XYZ, or like, a little bit more about recovery, like having the insight to be like, oh, I worked out really hard, I should drink an extra bit of water or whatever, because I know that I've like my salt balance or whatever is going to be thrown off, and that's going to help metabolically. It's like not anything like real big picture, just like a couple percentage points here and there as far as like going a little bit harder, recovering a little bit easier.
That's awesome.
That being said, I'd love it if more people knew just like a real foundational, like which aspects of their body are engaged in weightlifting. I think that it would help a lot as far as just the layperson knowing that like, oh, this exercise goes towards this group of muscles more directly, because some people will be doing certain things and like they probably don't, it's probably activating like 6 different muscle groups than you think it will. And like
that's a crazy
something
concept.
you said, I'm sure,
Humans
for
should
isolation.
know how to move under load.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what a crazy
I think
concept,
that would serve
right?
a lot of people really well. What was that?
I said, what a crazy concept that humans should know how to move well under load.
Yeah, exactly.
Even
small things, as far as like the old adage of like lift with your legs, not with your back. Like if people knew a little bit more about like how to do that, I think society as a whole would have a lot less chronic back pain.
How quickly we went from everybody knowing how to work on a farm or do manual labor, 150 years ago, to nobody knowing how to move.
Only a couple generations ago, and we just like lost that ability to like know how to like have footwear that was supportive in the right way.
Exactly. It's wild.
And there is some of that that's like coming back around when people are realizing that like, oh, it's important to walk. Crazy.
I feel like the more that we're advancing in our understanding of like human movement and nutrition, the more we're actually going towards being more ape-like. Like, take off your shoes. You should intermittent fast, just like apes go and hunt and gather. You should eat whole ingredients and organic foods. I'm like, huh. Wow. You mean like be more like an animal?
Yeah. All those small things that we take for granted that would make like a huge difference. I heard they did a study a little while back. I forget which university, but it was one of those like big prominent universities, and they had people who were suffering from chronic knee pain, and they like told half of them to like stop wearing shoes or wear like.
I know exactly what the study you're talking about.
Yeah.
Slit on the knee and
exact small things like stop wearing like bad shoes for you, and like they managed to like, I forget what the exact metric was, if it was either like reduction in pain or like fewer people needing knee replacements, but it was crazy, just like a small detail like
they changed the shoes and put a small superficial scar on the knee of people that didn't receive surgery for their knee, and told them they received surgery, and then they had a group where they actually received the surgery, and then months later the knee pain was exactly the same.
Yeah.
This is why people can't understand all this stuff, because then you'll put chiropractor and doctors out of work. You can't have that. Like, if people know how to lift properly under load and actually plan for it and know their muscle groups,
or people will just assume they're part of a science experiment and not getting the treatment.
You won't have massage therapists and chiropractors anymore.
I mean, the placebo effect is very real still. It sure does feel good to have your back cracked, whether or not it's like doing anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
But along those same lines that we're talking about, what are some lifestyle habits that you subscribe to that would help the average person trying to get fit and healthy?
I was thinking about this the other day, because I've been trying to listen to more of your episodes to kind of familiarize with some of the questions. But it really is just small things. I don't think there's anything radical that I'm going to be able to say that somebody else hasn't done. But as far as exercising goes, I would love it if people would just have a bit more fun with whatever it is they're doing. Whether you're running on the treadmill for half an hour 3 days a week, or lifting weights, doing your bodybuilding or powerlifting background, or even if you're like doing weird stuff like we do, bending steel, wrenches and all this stuff. Like whatever you're doing, it's going to be really hard to do that day in and day out if you don't enjoy the hell out of it. You know, whether or not you like, oh, and I did this myself. I was like, I'm gonna swim. I swam when I was a little kid. I swam a bit in high school, and I was like, I'm gonna swim in college too because I'm reasonably good at it. But it was just something I didn't enjoy, and so it was really hard to wake up at, you know, whatever, to do 2-a-day workouts where you're swimming and then working out later in the day and then swimming again. Like if it's something you don't enjoy, you're not going to want to do it, and you're not going to stick with that activity. You know, if you want to make real lifestyle changes, it has to be something that you want to do. Like no one's going to want to quit drinking or quit smoking no one's going to quit drinking or quit smoking unless it's something that they want to do. No one's gonna, you know, stop eating fast food and start spending the effort that goes into like picking out groceries, making sure you have all the spices, having the pots, pans, and taking the time to, you know, work over a stove if you don't enjoy it. Like there has to be some aspect of working out in some way that you enjoy, otherwise you're not going to want to do it. So I think that my biggest piece of advice to people who are couch potatoes potentially is to find something that you enjoy, you know, whether or not it's you enjoy it because you're walking with your partner or your friends. Like find something that you actually want to do, and you might have to kind of explore and find things that you don't want to do first. You know, it's that aspect of like, well, at least you know what you don't like as well.
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
I think that's super important, just because like, eventually you want it to become not just an activity, but almost a hobby and a habit of staying active one way or another. You know, as a future physician, just a few short months away, you know, like whatever patient population I'm talking to as far as like be active, like I almost like there are studies that say like walking or, you know, swimming is better for your joints because less impact or whatever. Like as long as people are moving their bodies, like I don't care.
Absolutely. There's going to be minute differences between exercises, but the truth comes down to if you don't enjoy it and you don't do it, it doesn't matter what the difference is.
Right. You know, how many people have like Planet Fitness memberships or whatever and just never go because they hate it? You know,
like 90% of those people.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't like doing it, you're not going to want to do it. Like whatever it is, like if it's a chore to you, you're not going to do it. You gotta enjoy it. You know, life is too short, and like we somehow know this, that if we're like, oh, I don't want to do this thing, you'll put it off and you won't do it, and you'll do it tomorrow. You have to tell yourself like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it next week, I'll do it when I'm in a better mood, like whatever it is. Like if you don't want to do it, you're not going to want to do it, you're not going to do it.
Yeah,
so you gotta find something that whatever activity you do, just to have people find something that they like.
I agree 100%. So if you could start your training all over again with what you know now, what would you do different and why?
I actually live in Santa Cruz, you know, a stone's throw away from Clay Edgin all throughout high school and middle school. I wish that when I was a depressed whatever teenager and like didn't know what to do with myself, I had just like found Santa Cruz strength in, you know, the same like shopping center area as the Costco that my parents would go to every other week or whatever. If I had just been like dropped off like, hey, go hang out with this behemoth of a man who can practically crush skulls with his hands, that kind of thing. And just like the simple things like learning how to squat 10 years earlier than I had would have made it so I wouldn't have had to make so many jokes about having chicken legs, you know?
Yep.
I think just starting earlier would have been a huge benefit. Because like I said, I even did the thing of like, oh, I'm going to try this activity and have it not be for me, even though I spent a couple of years trying to do it. I was a competitive swimmer in high school. I was on the varsity swim team in college, but like it wasn't something I enjoyed. Whereas turns out rock climbing and lifting weights is super fun for me. But I didn't know that until I was 22, 23.
Yep. That's just the way it is, man. I didn't
but I always wish
start lifting real heavy until recently, and I'm 37. So,
Yeah.
it's just a different track. Now I look at it like, well, there's guys that are peaking in their early 40s in strongman, or guys in powerlifting that peak in their early 40s. So I'm like, well, hey, I've got 5 years to get as strong as possible. Let's do it.
Yeah, and then there's Mark Felix, who is still top of his game forever and ever.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then there's guys like Mark Felix,
Yeah, exactly.
Like you said, Mark Felix
Yeah.
at 50.
At 55, just broke the Hercules
Yeah.
hold.
Yeah, he's insane. I mean, talk about, people who are genetically blessed one way or another. He has such tremendous hands. I hear that he couldn't even close a number 3 gripper just because his hands were too large to be able to get a good set on it or whatever.
That's just crazy.
Have to take that old Magnus Samuelson technique and only use 3 fingers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I've watched the video of him closing the 4, and he just envelops that thing with his hands.
And he's like, I can only get 3 fingers on it, but I got it for a couple reps, guys. So, it's all good, right?
God.
What a beast. Yeah, he was one of the early mega beasts of strongman. He was a huge dude for his time period, for sure.
Yeah. It's pretty cool to see how people, I don't know, throughout history, but throughout the last 50 years or whatever of competitive sports that just come and blow everybody out of the water. I was talking about this with somebody the other day that if bending the red nail was as big of a feat as typical gym bro benching 225, if there were that many people who were really going for it, there would be all sorts of crazy things that would have happened already with bending. The gold nail would have been
years ago. Yeah.
Somebody asked me
there'd be a gold nail bending club.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Somebody asked me if I forget his full name, but the guy, Irregular Strength, Julius something or other, who has the bench press world record.
Julius Maddox.
Yeah. And he's closing in on 800 pounds. And somebody asked me oh, do you think he'd be able to bend a gold nail? And I was like, I have absolutely no idea. There's just so many people out there who probably could do incredible things with, different strength sports bending, but because they're they've already found something else they're really, really good at, that no one's gonna spend the time and effort to rough up their hands to bend a gold nail because he's busy benching 770 pounds or whatever, as long as nobody misloads the bar.
Yeah, exactly. Man, that was so ridiculous. They got ESPN and that whole thing, and then they misloaded the bar.
You had one job, one of those specific examples where you really just have one job and you messed it up.
You only had to count half the weight too.
I mean, they're thin plates though, one side. And they're thin plates though, and they're
they're really
red.
shiny. It's
I mean, if they were all each different colors or red and black, red, black, red, black, it might be easier. Maybe put some numbers on them or something.
Yeah.
So
learn how to count.
I
understand.
Less than 10.
Well, speaking of loading up bars really carefully, I did watch the live stream of Thor going for the 501.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really funny the way they would put every 25 kilo plate on the scale and then be like, ooh, okay, it's done. And the amount of ceremony involved was pretty funny. So there's different aspects of it, but at any rate, if there were more people who were doing grip sport, if more people cared to try and lift the inch dumbbell or whatever it was, I'm sure more people would be able to. Some people just have that strength or really strong at some other thing, but because competitive steel bending is not something they even know about, they're never gonna try and do that.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the ones that's kind of held into the performing strongman group more than almost anything else.
And good for them, the guys who can hold a conversation, spin a tail while also doing that stuff. Telling a story is one thing, bending nails is another thing, but doing both at the same time and making it a learning experience for kids it's really cool what they're doing. But it's one way of outreach, but at that point it's almost not about the steel. You might as well go to a magic show. It's something that people aren't going to understand, whether or not it's your reflexes and your misdirection or the strength and the durability of your hands. At that point, it's almost more about the show than the steel. which is like exciting, but also like kind of a bummer too, because it becomes less about like the strength in what you're doing. I think it's really cool when, you know, there does happen to be that crossover between, you know, strength and storytelling. I know Mighty Mike was a really good example of that. He's a guy who, you know, he literally travels the world doing these competitions, doing these old time performance shows. And like I was following along on Instagram as he was like traveling through the Northeast and stuff. But at the same time, he like really took the pandemic to like get super strong. He probably would have certified on the red nail if he hadn't like dropped the cert package and everything, gone off screen for a minute. But you know, he's a guy who, you know, not unlike Bud Jeffries, like does performance stuff and like does have this ability to like the charisma to like work a stage and work a crowd, but at the same time he's like a super strong dude, which is really cool when that works out.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember
I might be a good bender, but nobody wants to hear me talk about my story.
I remember when I was like I was young. I think I was like 8 years old the first time I got really motivated about strength, and it was seeing those that traveling the faith team, the strong guys that would like preach in churches, but then break baseball bats and like air guards and blow up water bottle, like, you know, hot water bottles, while wearing the American flag and whatever. Those guys were awesome.
I think there's some priest. I don't know if he's in Middle America or if he's somewhere in Europe, but he's like a competitive strongman and also a priest.
There you go. Exactly.
Funny ways you can do both at the same time.
Perfect. So, you know, it's storytelling, motivating people, setting them on the right path, and destroying stuff at the same time. Why not?
They were on the most random channels too. That
if you don't like what I'm preaching, remember I can bend this in half.
Yeah.
So before we let you go, do you have any questions for us, Couch Potato Strong, or any other advice you would like to shoot out to the fans, or any plugs you want to make, or anything like that?
Kind of asking just like more broadly, but like what inspired you guys to turn all this into a podcast rather than just, you know, getting strong on your own? What made you guys want to share it so broadly with this cool podcast, this new avenue, rather than just like, you know, your friends in the garage, which is how a lot of grip is just like you and your buddies hanging out. But like, what made you want to make this into kind of a bigger, broader thing?
I think just growing up in general, seeing a lot of things people did when they were strongmans at first, and you see some of the aspects that are kind of almost like tricks or certain things that are, you know, secrets of the trade that they're not going to share. I don't like that aspect of, you know, competing because somebody has an edge, so I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do this. So we thought if we could find, you know, all the elite people of different areas of working out, whether it be obstacle course racing, benders, gripsters, strongman, or whatever, that want to grow their community and share their secrets, so we could get out relevant information for anybody looking to actually work out and pursue something, that we're able to get it from, you know, top guys that share information, and everybody could, you know, compete safely and actually work towards a worthwhile goal.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and you see, like, right on that note, we've seen guys, we follow guys in grip, of course, and just follow guys in strength in general, but you see guys in grip that got to hang out with some people that knew what they were doing. Like, they just happened to be close to Jed, or they just happened to be close to Adam. And they just, I grew up, you know, next 3 blue blocks away, and I found this guy, and I decided to go train with him. And they make progress so fast, it's insane. In a year, they're already, like, you know, competing in grip and like a decent gripster. And then you see other guys that are training on their own that spend 10 years trying to figure out how to lift a blob or do this or that, and they just never make the connection because there's little techniques they don't know. And we just really wanted to get those out there.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, a great example of that is London Sherman. I feel like I'm mispronouncing his name, but how he happens to be like pretty close to Don Cummings, and so he got to be up to the point where he's like snapping grade 5 and grade 8s, like with just a couple of weeks to a month or two of training. It's amazing stuff. But then as far as like the guys taking 10 years to lift the blob or whatever, I remember a while back hearing about the Guinness World Record for solving a Rubik's Cube without knowing how to solve a Rubik's Cube. Because again, it's one of those things where like, if you don't know, it's a trick. And this guy it was something absurd, like 25 years doing a Rubik's Cube without knowing the like, turn it this way, turn it this way, the like formula aspect of it, but just like trying it the old fashioned way of like, I don't know how this goes. And he like eventually did get it, but like, it is so much easier when you have just like a little bit of direction. So I think it's really cool that you guys are doing that and able to put out this podcast to kind of bring some of that knowledge together. I had a hard time starting out steel bending. I had literally a note list on my phone of like 7 or 8 links as far as resources, because everything was so spread out. And like, even in just the past year and a half, less than 2 years of bending and grip, a lot of the information has become a lot more centralized and readily available. So I really appreciate the work you guys are doing, put into that to kind of continue that onwards.
Well, we appreciate that. Yeah, we hope to continue that in grip, and eventually, you know, because he has his own sport specialties and I do as well. Blending what we've learned from grip into how it can apply to our other performance avenues as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, there's a lot of grapplers that do grip as well, and I do martial arts stuff, but I also know that, you know, grip is helping me make a harder strike. It's helping me make a harder fist. It's helping me deliver power better. And there's ways I'll eventually start to talk about that from, you know, a more of an academic standpoint.
Yeah, that's
fill everybody in on how it is all working.
That's awesome.
All right, well, we loved having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a cool way to spend an evening and talk to you guys.
Absolutely. So definitely get some golden potato lifts as soon as you get your potatoes. We can't wait to see what you can do with them.
Will do.
And yeah, that should be a hoop for you for sure.
Hope to add it to my collection. It'll be exciting.
Yeah, the benders have done pretty good. Derek Graybo monstered out some good feats on the potatoes.
Rock
Guys with
climbers are
some
killing
good
it.
fingertip strength helps a lot. Rock climbers are killing the potatoes, so
Yeah.
you have a really good shot at doing well on them.
Yeah, I was thinking about it earlier as far as like if my hands are big enough to like crimp all the way around it, so I'm doing a kind of a reverse crimp on it on the edges. It'll be exciting.
That's what the Aussies do.
That's what the Aussies are doing. Yep, and they have a lot of the top spots on the boards. Well, all right. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Appreciate it.
You too.